Hello and welcome back to another Yakuza game with Yakuza 5, or Ryuga Dotoku Yon Yume Kanashimono, or Like the Dragon 5 Fulfill Our Dreams on the docket for the video this time. I'll be focusing on the remastered version for PC, and this will be my second time visiting this particular entry, and hopefully that'll be enough for me to have some insight into the game, or just the sheer amount of time I spent playing this entry, since until Yakuza 7, 5 was the longest game with just the story with a bit over 30 plus hours. For me, I clocked about 42 hours, that's including side stories, sub-stories, and the story itself. This entry is also one of the first games that the Ryuga Gotoku studio debuted with in 2012, and if Yakuza 4 started the groundwork for the later games like Yakuza 0, 5 took what 4 began, amped it up with a lot of devs saying that the goal of 5 was to have one of the greatest scripts and scenarios in the series' history at the time. With a new engine for the game and being used as a fresh start for developers, I asked, did they succeed in their ambitions for 5? Did Ryuga Gotoku Studios pack too much into 5? Is there just so much here that the sheer variety here makes Yakuza 5 fall under itself? I invite you to join me in one of the longest Yakuza stories told, the biggest cast to date, and the lengths that the cast goes to fulfill the dreams that they carry with them and the opposition they face to make them a reality. Join me today in trying to answer just how good is Yakuza 5 Remastered. So, after Yakuza 4 expanded the roster from just Kiryu with 3 more playable characters, Yakuza 5 continued this new tradition with now 5 characters and the various playstyles that go with them. Rather than a one-to-one repackage of the mechanics, Ryuga Gotoku Studios reworks them with the new engine they were using at the time, and gave each character more unique mechanics and just refined what they had already built with the Yakuza 4. To further go with that, we get not just the staple city of Kamurocho, but the returning Sotenbori, along with 3 brand new cities to explore with Nagasugai and Fukuoka, Tsukamino and Hokkaido, and Kaneicho and Nagoya, with their own diverse activities to partake in with the character roster that 5 has to offer. This Yakuza title has so much put into it that it's shocking how well done the team did with all this stuff that many other games would have issues with balancing them out. Though there are issues with it I can detail more about later, all the while, these tie into a giant narrative that really works with everything that was just put into Yakuza 5. So let's get into the first big changes with the Yakuza formula starting in 4. The gameplay and the more refined gameplay with returning characters. A way of playing that really works, and a brand new character with a very fun playstyle to boot. And before you ask where Tanamura is, well, here's an explanation. His face model and voice was changed because of drug allegations with the original actor. A similar thing happened with Judgment, with Kyohei Hamura's actor charged with similar charges and having a similar change. I'm not making that up, that this actually did happen. And what did Ryuga Gotoku Studios do in regards to Tanamura?
Who the fuck is that guy?
And let's get into the gameplay that Yakuza 5 has to offer. Returning from Yakuza 4 are Kiryu, Akiyama, and Saejima, with their combat styles being relatively untouched from their iteration in 4. New to the Yakuza series is Haruka debuting as a playable character for the very first time, along with newcomer Shinada. First up is long-timer Kiryu, coming back with his usual movesets that you may have become accustomed to throughout the entire series, with his biggest addition being his Dragon Spirit, with functionality that is similar to Kiwami 2's Extreme Heat mode, that increases Kiryu's attack power, makes him do Shadow Step into opponents, and just toss enemies like the ragdolls, including even the boss fights. Aside from that, Kiryu is pretty close in gameplay from prior games and is still fun to play as. Next, there's Saejima with his similar moveset from 4, but this time he fights like an absolute monster, with him still making enemies bounce off surfaces like rubber balls, but being able to grapple them and just turn them into ragdolls and whip them into enemies, and being able to pick up some of the heaviest objects in the game as weapons like these fire signs that can one-hit guys, or a freaking transformer for electricity as a weapon, turning Saejima into one of the most destructive forces in a Yakuza game to date. Following after Saejima, we have Haruka, who has some of the biggest differences with the rest of the cast. Instead of her fighting like the others, she does these dance battles that are rhythm-based games that use heat actions for either damage or health. That honestly, if you're reading this on paper, it sounds so out of left field it wouldn't and most likely shouldn't work, but it does. And is a pretty fun time for a character that is playable for the very first time in the series. Then we have Akiyama showing up again with his usual footmark being great at, but with the addition of him becoming a DMC character.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Daddy, chill. I'm a Barbie girl in the Barbie world.
Being able to kick opponents into the air, juggle them for a good bit, and even throw them into other enemies just to add to it. Finally is Shinada with a more unorthodox way to fight, using his experiences with playing baseball, incorporating them into his moves, and being more of a weapon expert of all the characters. Being able to use many weapons like an unassuming normal pipe, like a friggin' Jedi, except for baseball bats. If you try to use them as Shinada, he'll look at them and just put them back down. This actually counts as invincibility frames and can be strategically used, though it's more of a nice detail that he has. The characters also have a level system similar to 4 by getting points to use to enhance their various moves, health, or add more heat actions to their pool, along with health increases with levels. Even having a weapon level system that increases damage and durability within a specific weapon type. Per usual with a Yakuza game are the heat actions with the characters.
I'ma plant me a dumbass tree!
And each character being able to use these essence moves. that are exclusive to them that can be pretty flashy to watch and very damaging. Plus, feeling the heat actions returning and being fantastic to see being used on bosses, including a giant freaking bear boss that makes the tiger fight in Kiwami 2 look like kittens in size. The heat actions are at some of their best with Yakuza 5 and just fantastic to see, even if some of them can be a little bit janky in places. And the bear boss is just one highlight for boss fights in Yakuza 5. The bosses that are in 5 are some of the best in the series to date. And if I'm being honest, with the final boss being one of the most cinematic ones that the series has to showcase. Haruka also gets her own feel the heats with her climax scenes during these idol battles that use a quick change outfit that might as well be a friggin' Sailor Moon transformation without functions like magic. Returning are revelations, with them being a little more simplified to execute, though this time around they're more difficult to find, and are definite reminders that Yakuza games can be very weird at points and serve to remind us not to take the series too seriously. Inner Fighter also makes its return with the characters using a nerve gear-like helmet to enter a side-scrolling beat-em-up game. Haruka even becomes a magical girl with a wand and everything during these two. Through playing Inner Fighter, the characters get some enhancements to various skills like in Yakuza 4. There is also returning locker keys that are available in each city to find if you really want to look for them to get various items and further explore the new cities 5 introduces. Also returning are the masters for each character that give each of them their new moves to use throughout the game, along with their own little stories to go with them, or just being completely strange like Saejima fighting gods for his new moves. There's also some new minigames that are in Yakuza 5, such as a tower defense game called Gunnerheim, I'm not sure how to fully pronounce that, the rhythm game Taiko no Tatsujin, a snowball fight FPS, with Saejima being among the many returning ones like pool or darts, and chase battles that got even more refinement to them, or just one-shot ones like most notably the snowmobile chase segment. There's also the side story games that I'll get into a little bit later since they're more connected to the story content, but the 5 characters have some of the best side content I've come to experience in the series and reminds me of the quality that Zero started this video series with. Looking at Yakuza 5 from strictly a gameplay perspective, it's pretty obvious that what was refined in 4 just got even better to play in 5 and just had so much care put into it that when 0 would come around, it's amazing to see how the studio just took what worked and tweaked it even more than before, with a lot of gameplay out of the way. Let's get into some of the sub-stories and actually talk about the side stories with the really friggin' cool mechanics that honestly added more to my playtime because of how fun these were to play through. As per usual with most of the Yakuza games, each character has their sub-stories as they explore their particular city. But what's most on display is the side stories that the characters have, which have their own narrative and their own set of missions among the multiple characters. Kiryu has his taxi driver stories, where he drives people around in a taxi while talking to them and taking care to listen to traffic laws, or just talking to them in his taxi and keeping them happy. Or when the game takes the training wheels off, as it were, and becomes an initial D simulator.
こんな近くで直に見られるチャンスはめったにないから、これぞ本物のドリフト。
Initial D.
Before we get back to our regularly scheduled program, a special shout out to this wonderful dance in Alan Wake 2. Wait, what's happening with my footage?
New opponent is ready to face you.
Activate your mama, then I activate... What? You heard me, Kaiba. Your mama. I activated her.
Whoever that is doing the dance is fantastic. Who is this majestic creature? On the lookout for a new game and like creature capturing based games? Then you'll really like to play just in time for the new year. Pal World. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Initial D.
Kiryu's taxi driver story is very similar to Initial D, with racing to be the best in the area. Having a boss that was a former street racer himself, a good amount of the taxi drivers also being former racers, and just having a wonderful narrative that, as an Initial D lover myself, I was so giddy playing through it, I actually forgot the main story for a good few hours. After Kiryu's stories, we go to Saejima, who, after events in his main story, begins the Hunter and Killer side story, where he hunts animals on a mountain range while helping the local village he inhabits facing the elements to eventually take down said giant bear from earlier, Yama Orochi, from attacking the village. After playing a lot of Monster Hunter, it felt similar to it, with the various item management, repairing buildings to survive the wilderness, and laying traps to get items from the wildlife to sell or procure for quests Saejima can take on, which is very fun and has a very good narrative to it that actually made me want to see more of the side characters and learn more about the area with them, with a fairly satisfying conclusion to its main narrative. Haruka and Akiyama, on the other hand, have a more shared side story called The Road to Fame that has Haruka and Akiyama do various things with Haruka's idol agency, from doing music events, premiering on TV shows, handshake events, and various dance battles that all contribute to Haruka's stats as an idol and level up her agency to take on more jobs, and really feels like an idol simulator, with Akiyama doing a bit himself to help the overall idol story. Finally, with Shinada, he has The Cost of a Swing, that features the most refined baseball minigame so far in the series and has him gain stats and abilities due to his baseball background, and deal with people coming from his past or running from the various troubles in their own personal lives. and Shinada facing some of his own demons from his past along the way, making the baseball minigame that was already pretty fun very compelling with the story that is presented along with it, making me wish there were baseball games of this caliber and not only gameplay, but a story to go with it and fleshing out what is here even more so. All of the side stories have their own thing going for them and have more to offer than you'd expect from a side content perspective, and I'm happy the Ryu.Gotoku Studios decided to continue expanding on this concept and just giving more stuff to do in later games that are on par with the main story in quality. There are also the various sub-stories again that are fairly short and more to the point with some pretty funny ones to find throughout Yakuza 5. Due to the side stories taking most of my attention away from the already stellar story, I didn't do too many of them, but what ones I did that stood out were when Kiryu helps do a movie shoot with an interesting vampire premise that is pretty cool, Saejima dressing up as Santa Claus to take out Santa hunters and decking the halls with bouts of ass-kicking, and fighting a bear in the city that is somehow smaller than Yama Orochi from his side story. Haruka stories and Akiyamas have similar themes that connect more with the main side story, like doing a battle royale with locals, and Akiyama helping a struggling idol as her manager for a day, with Akiyama having to answer questions wrong in part of it. This made my eye twitch because answering wrong is hard for me to do in general, and Shinada's sub-stories are more about him helping people with odd jobs and that I didn't do much of just because his main story and side story were so dang good. Although the sub-stories were there, I ended up not doing a good chunk of them because of how good the side stories are. The music this time around also got some fantastic tunes with a bunch of them sticking out, such as when doing the taxi races, getting a Eurobeat style track, and if you don't know Eurobeat...
Hello sir, I seem to be having an issue. What's the phenomenon where you feel like you've experienced it before?
Go watch Initial D or look at the OST. It's fantastic. Some of the best music I have ever heard in general, I should say. There's also a long battle theme that happens in a good portion of the game called Nuisances, which the name nailed it. And the final battle getting some great music to go with one of the most dynamic battles to finish off a Yakuza game with the music is a delight to listen to all on their own. Aside from the music, Yakuza 5 also uses some excellent sound design that turns the already great heat actions from being a sight to watch. They are now crunchy and wince-inducing with when there's certain heat actions done. And if I had to pick out specific highlights for story bits, I would have a very hard time because Yakuza 5 has some of the best voice acting to go with a Yakuza game, and Ian has more voice acting in text dialogues that can be fantastic just hearing the player characters talking. So if I really had to pick out particular scenes, here we go. Spoilers for those that are worried about them, timestamp will be about here to skip to the main story synopsis, or if you wanted to skip to the wrap-up altogether, here's the timestamp for that as well. Ready? Here we go. With Kiryu, I'd have to say the build-up to him taking on the Tojo clan by himself with maybe 100 plus guys, and that's just guessing on my part, with rockets being so awesome.
さあ、時間だ。始めようか。あなたは
この喧嘩俺が引き受ける。
4代目。
それは昔の話だ。今は流すタクシーという会社で働くただの運転手だ。
まさか4代目登場会に協力するためにわざわざなんとお礼を言っていいのか。
ああ、協力しに来たぜ。ただしろくに極道の筋も知らないお前らガキが間違った道に進まないようにするためにな。
なんですって。
やっぱり来ましたか。
Saejima gets one of the smoothest scenes of kidnapping a guy that I'm still in awe of how friggin' smooth it is.
もういいんだいいんだ、気にしないでくれ。さあ、オープニングの航空ショーが始まりますよ。どうですか、見事なもんでしょう。今年は結構金を使ったんですよ。あれ
Haruka also gets some good down-to-earth moments with newcomer Mirai Park, and having some pretty good heart-to-heart moments, and Park talking about the many sacrifices she had to do to become an idol herself that were absurdly high and serve as a pretty cautionary tale for the young Haruka. Akiyama didn't really have ones that really stuck out, though he's still a joy to watch. Finally, Shinada also got me with his personality when he's first fully introduced right off the bat, coming off as a proto-Ichiban from Yakuza 7, and just how down-to-earth he is in his interactions he has with characters that make me love him as a character.
品田、今回は絶対返すって約束だろ。おいこら、早く開けろこら。
That's just if I had to pick specific moments, because the presentation in Yakuza 5 is superb. Though my biggest critique is that though the cinematics and presentation are fantastic, they can be a bit too long at times, making the general pacing of 5 come to a halt abruptly, or be long enough that even my controller would turn off at times on its own. That's probably the biggest criticism I have for 5, is that though the performances and all that go into them are great and compelling, they take just a bit too long enough to make me annoyed. This becomes less of a problem with games coming after 5, but you can tell that the devs put a lot of love and detail into these despite the pacing getting bloated in places. Then, of course, are the prime stars of the game, the bats of these men. Except for Akiyama, he's a prude, won't take off his shirt at all. Shinada, on the other hand, goes above and beyond with his exercise routine and having some of the most chiseled abs I've seen so far in the series.
取り戻せない。達夫。
勝手に語ってんじゃねえよ。
Oh my god, you could grind meat on it.
こっちはこの15年、素振り5000回、腕立て腹筋1000回、1日たりとも休んじゃいねえんだ。
100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats, then a 10-kilometer run!
I know you probably won't be able to see me in this video, but I'm practically drooling over the eye candy that's on display here, and I don't even swing that way.
I have the weirdest boner right now.
Wait, there's a story to go with all this? Now, I'll be splitting the overall narrative of the game into about 5 parts, so please bear with me. This game's story is long. It's revealed that Yakuza 5 is roughly a year and a half later, and Kiryu has ended up in the city of Nagasugai in the Fukuoka region, making ends meet as a taxi driver and seemingly alone when Daido Dojima is traveling to the area and tracks him to solicit Kiryu for help with an ensuing conflict between the Omi and the Tojo that he's unsure he can fully handle. Shortly after Kiryu says he can't help Daido, Kiryu finds out that Daigo has disappeared from his Tojo attendance, which makes Kiryu noticeably concerned about Daigo's whereabouts. After Daigo's disappearance leaves a void in the hierarchy of the Tojo, people from within the Tojo try to make a power grab, and with some urging from Officer Serizawa, who seems to know intimate details about Kiryu and why he's in Fukuoka, meeting Captain Watase, and being trained for an attack on the local Yakuza family in the area, Kiryu ends up having to take on the Tojo completely on his own to stop the ensuing war in the region as the only true impartial party when it comes to the Yakuza organizations, bringing him back into the fold of the Yakuza world. Though successful in stopping the machinations in the region, as Kiryu is getting himself ready to figure out what's going on with the Tojo and Omi, Majima is supposedly found to have been killed in a similar encounter, forcing Kiryu to fully make his way back to Kamurocho to solve the ever-evolving mystery that's occurring. Following the events of Yakuza 4, Saejima has had his sentence reduced and ends up serving the rest of this lessened sentencing in what he metaphorically calls getting burnt lacquer like tripe, so he can be an even better Yakuza for his new family when he eventually gets out of prison. After serving 2 years by the time of Yakuza 5, Saejima has made friends with his cellmates, most notably Baba.
Now, Tristan, create a distraction while I point at the sky dramatically.
Baba Booey, Howard Stern, Baba Booey.
Well done, Tristan.
A former Yakuza that's been serving a long sentence himself. Saejima is close to making parole when he receives a letter stating he's been expelled from the Tojo, making Saejima curious what could be happening back home, when shortly after, he finds out about Majima's death in the news. Suspicions amp up when a mystery group is out to get Saejima in prison, and when his parole is denied, he and Baba end up having to escape the prison to find out the truth of what happened with Majima as the prison is razed upon their exit. The two men make it out to the nearby city of Tsutomono after meeting locals in the mountains and getting their assistance, and ending up having to kidnap the Hidakata family head to figure out what happened with Majima, since the family allegedly killed Majima. In a twist, Baba, who said he was part of the same family, is revealed to not only not be part of the Hidakata, but working for some unknown people that even Majima suspected were behind the scenes controlling Daido and the Omi. Saejima is able to convince Baba to help, and after Saejima is arrested, he meets Serizawa himself, who says that it's the Tojo that's behind everything that is happening, making the already complex mystery more so as Saejima heads to Kamurocho with Serizawa. The beginning of this part has Haruka Sawamura chasing her longtime dream of becoming an idol and the many trials and tribulations that come with becoming a massive success in the idol world. Before that occurs though, roughly a year and a half prior, Mirai Park discovers Haruka and offers Kiryu the chance to let her and the orphans of Morning Glory a chance to chase their own dreams, at the cost of Kiryu going into hiding and ensuring that if Haruka becomes famous, his status as a famous Yakuza doesn't come into play to hurt her later. Haruka learns that not only is being an idol difficult, but that sometimes to chase a dream can lead to many sacrifices along the way. As Haruka participates in the Princess League for a chance to make it big into the idol world, Park is seemingly murdered at her office, with it being staged as a suicide. While this is happening, Akiyama arrives to Sotenbori trying to start up a new branch of his business when he's following up on a loan he gave out to Park, which brings him into the fold with helping Haruka trying to investigate what exactly is going on with Park, and a mysterious letter that unknown men are after pertaining to Park's ex-husband, revealed to be none other than Goro Majima. As Akiyama delves deeper into the strange characters after the letter, Haruka is able to win the Princess League and secure a venue for later as per Park's wishes, and Akiyama discovers that Naoki Tatsuya, the president of rival idol agency Osaka Talent, has some ties to what is happening around Haruka. After Haruka attempts to come to a deal later with Tatsuya and the letter, she gets intercepted by Kanai, Tatsuya's strongman, and with Akiyama's help, Haruka and her idol crew make plans to go to the Japan Dome and fulfill Park's final wishes, and Akiyama is going to try and track down and stop whatever machinations are happening involving the Tojo, Omi, and whatever connection there is with Haruka's concert. Tatsuo Shinada is a former professional baseball player who had his first and only time to bat in 1997, and would be expelled due to allegations of being a part of match fixing following an awe-inspiring home run hit. 15 years later, and switching careers to being a nightlife writer for his local area of Nagoya, and is in debt with a loan shark named Takasugi. When out of nowhere, Daigo Dojima, sporting a pretty poor disguise in my opinion, offers him a job to investigate what really happened with Shinada's one and only game, with 20 million yen as payment for the job. After giving it much thought and some convincing from Takasugi, Shinada begins to look into his last game and ends up discovering there were nefarious forces at work, revealing not only were there match fixings definitely happening, but the Omi and Tojo had a big part into the entire business, with Shinada's home run throwing their plans out the window and the mysterious Nagoya family filling the void left by the two Yakuza organizations. After many attempts on his life, Shinada discovers that Nagoya are actually civilians working with his former coach, Fujita, with an even more nefarious puppeteer controlling them, with a family from the Omi behind the Nagoya using them from the shadows. After Shinada reports his findings, along with his old baseball friend Sawada, exposing the Nagoya, the final puppeteer springs his grand plan into action in Kamurocho. After many ups and downs with our characters, they have all ended up back in Kamurocho for one final act. Kiryu begins tracking down information with the help of Baba, who has arrived in Kamurocho at Saijuma's behest, and they both conclude that the endgame is an open war with Omi and Tojo. They split up to gather more information in the Kamurocho underground, and Saijima finds Aizawa, Daigo's former attendant, searching for his own answers. Meanwhile, Date is investigating with the police and discovers an attempted staging of Fujita's suicide, with Omi being set up as the perps, bringing more questions to the table. Following that, Akiyama is approached by Tatsuya, attempting to bribe him to cancel Haruka's concert debut, with Akiyama declining Tatsuya's offer, and eventually coming into contact with Shinada at his office asking for 320 million yen to cancel Haruka's concert out of concern for her. From many perspectives, it's looking like Tatsuya is the man behind the curtain, especially after him publicly stating that Haruka's concert is cancelled. Kiryu and Saijima make way to the recently finished Kamurocho Hills, with Tatsuya and Watase awaiting them on the roof, with Tatsuya revealing that the reason they're all there in Kamurocho is because of the one true mastermind. After a fight between the four men, it's revealed who the mastermind is behind all that has transpired so far. Detective Serizawa, revealed to be the 7th chairman of the Omi Alliance, real name Kurosawa, is the man behind it all. Despite the efforts of Daido, who was onto Kurosawa, he gets away to further enact his plan, later revealed to use Haruka's concert as a form of blackmail to get the revealed alive Majima to do his bidding, resulting in a fight between Majima and Saijima, with Haruka's life on the line. Unknown to Kurosawa though, Baba, who was supposed to be the sniper for Haruka, had a change of heart and is taken to task by Shinada and his former cellmates, turning Kurosawa's grand plan into a backfire of epic proportions. With his grand plan in shambles, Kurosawa reveals that the reason he did all this was due to him finding out that he was diagnosed with terminal cancer months prior, resulting in a midlife crisis in the old Yakuza, and becoming obsessed with leaving behind a legacy and implementing plans to take out the old ideals of Yakuza past, such as chasing your dreams, fighting for honor, or leaving dreams to other people. Core ideals of men like Kiryu, whom are core pillars of the Tojo. And who would be inheriting this grand legacy that Kurosawa planned? After enacting his plan, he was hoping to leave all the Tojo and Omi infrastructure to his sole heir, revealed to be Aizawa. The same Aizawa that was Daido's attendant, but despite being in on the plan and supporting it, Aizawa is only interested in one thing: proving that he's better than Kiryu, touted as the symbol of what a true Yakuza is, and not what Kurosawa left him. After a final fight between Aizawa and Kiryu, Haruka's concert goes off without a hitch, and Kiryu is able to stop Aizawa, even stating he'll be waiting for him to try and beat him again. And right before Haruka finishes her concert, she reveals her connection to Kiryu, and how becoming an idol cost her so many precious connections, and so she ends her career on a high note and abandons the idol life and leaves to find Kiryu, who is mortally wounded, with her barely finding him in the streets of Kamurocho. And the fate of them and their friends left a bit ambiguous, but hopefully in a better place when the credits begin to roll. After that massive wrap-up of various plot threads and boss battles, and an ending that doesn't wrap up as much as I would like it to, we finally approached the ending of this particular video. Yakuza 5 is massive, and at times it can come off feeling too massive, due to so many cities to explore, the sub and side story variety, and the performances from the main and secondary cast with some of the best storytelling in a Yakuza game. It's obvious that the devs put in so much love and care into Yakuza 5 that I honestly feel a little bad having some criticisms of my own despite liking 5 as much as I did. The biggest issue I have with it also goes hand in hand with the most prominent part of the game, the main story itself. Despite the efforts the devs put into the story, the cutscenes and dialogue come off as a bit much, with some fluff and fat that could have been trimmed in areas. This is probably a critique that the devs took to heart, since with Yakuza 0 following after 5, the storytelling is a lot more concise and to the point when I compare it to 5. Other than that, I didn't have many issues with Yakuza 5. The gameplay and presentation got amped up to levels that really set the standards we've seen up to Yakuza Kiwami 2. The side and sub-stories have begun to show that not only is the main story of a Yakuza game impressive, but these little pockets of tales in the world have just as much care put into them as the main story. And that Yakuza isn't just set in the motions from game to game. The devs take what they learn in each game and always seem to refine what needs tweaking and trimming away what is needlessly included. Especially with how Yakuza 0 created the formula of the modern Yakuza games that 5 ambitiously began prior to it. And though I'm nitpicking the story, I still enjoyed it. It's a very well told mystery thriller with twists and turns that wraps up pretty concisely, despite the ending being a slight stumble, honestly speaking. The player characters are even better to play around with this time, and were developed to feel even more distinct from each other better than in 4. That when the story was going on, I kept getting antsy to get back into playing as soon as possible. Yakuza 5 also reminded me of how a Metal Gear Solid game handles, with a majority of story taking precedence on gameplay. It's not the exact same, but with how it paces itself and uses its set pieces, I couldn't help but be reminded of Metal Gear. Another thing is that Yakuza 5 is similar in scope to a soft reboot, with many returning characters within new settings. It's why Tanamura isn't in 5, among other speculations, and why Kaoru from Yakuza 2 isn't in 5. This makes Yakuza 5 support the more self-contained narrative in the Yakuza series, as most of the events in 5 are primarily on their own and don't have direct consequences or connections to other titles. Could you start your journey here with the series as a whole? Not really, in my opinion. If you're going to play Yakuza 5 without prior knowledge, it will be a bit difficult to really get into the narrative and the scope of the character interactions with each other. And despite Yakuza 5 originally releasing in 2015 worldwide on PS3, this is a game that really holds up and is definitely up there as a classic, and the remastered version left most of this game untouched, making it a bit more enjoyable to play. So if you're wondering where to play the remastered version, it's on PC through Steam and GOG, PlayStation and Xbox, and Game Pass. With Game Pass, the option I wholly recommend, as it's the cheapest option if you're wanting to only try the game out. Other than that, this game goes on sale a lot of the time now, so even if you decide to just wait for that sale, you'll still be in for a great time. Hopefully I answered how good the game is, but without going into further details that would spoil the game more than I already have, this is a Yakuza game that you'd have to play to fully experience all the intricacies that are into its story. So how are we going to be ending this video with an abrupt ending to a Yakuza game? Well, first, leave a comment or subscribe for content. What did you like about Yakuza 5? What did you hate? Have you even played it yet? Here's what I have to end this video. Have a lovely day.
From 大丈夫か桐生。
いや、今は何も考えられね
え。だろうな。けどこの話にはまだ続きがある。
なんだと？
車が突っ込んでくるのを見たはるかが、自分のことはお構いなしに体を張って守ったものがある。
何？
つまりこの子ははるかの子だ。
なら父親は？この子の父親は誰なんだ？